Now for our next session, we have with us a youth icon from India. Oh, yes, they're talking about me. No? Oh, an entrepreneur who is changing the face of social media content. Definitely not me. Popularly known for his YouTube channel, Beer Biceps, my two favorite things, this young entrepreneur is the co-founder of Monk Entertainment, a leadership and career development coach, a young man of many skills. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Ranveer Alabadia. In this tete-a-tete with Mr. Piyush Puri, EVP Brand Capital International, Ranveer will tell us all about being an influencer and content creation space in India. Let's hear it.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us for our discussion with Ranveer Alabadia. My name is Piyush Puri, and today we are here to talk about the truly riveting and the flourishing space of influencers in India. I believe we have with us one of the best persons to talk about this subject and get his perspective on the landscape of influencers and influencer marketing. Ranveer is a social media entrepreneur, YouTuber, motivational speaker, leadership coach, and soon-to-be author. With more than 6 YouTube channels spread across self-improvement, lifestyle, and healthcare, and more than 7 million online followers, Ranveer is spearheading the growth of the social media influencer space in the country. Amongst Ranveer's many endeavors is Monk Entertainment, which is an 80-plus member organization that is a one-stop solution for digital marketing and talent management. He also hosts India's top podcast, The Ranveer Show, with guests like Priyanka Chopra, Glenn McGrath, and Sadhguru. A man of many skills and talents. Welcome to the show, Ranveer.
Thank you for having me, Piyush. Thank you for having me, guys.
Great. So I'll jump right in. Ranveer, according to Group M's report on social media influencers in India, the market is expected to touch nearly 120 million by 2021 and a massive 300 million by 2025. This translates to a compounded annual growth rate of around 25% year on year, making the sector one of the fastest growing across all segments in industry. So that's a very strong growth trajectory. What do you think are the primary drivers which are fueling the said growth in the country?
So when we began in 2015, I think it took us a year to see the Reliance Jio introduction in India, which changed everything for every single content creator in the country, all the influencers. Our numbers went up big time. To give you perspective, it took me about 3.5 years to reach 1 million subscribers on our English channel, and it took us 10 months or 11 months to reach the same number on Hindi, because the internet expanded into the far corners of the country, into the villages, the rural areas. People kind of went directly from having almost no source of entertainment to having phones, kind of parallel to what we see in the African economy, where they jump directly to mobile internet rather than using desktops, etc. So that gave us that initial splash. But now what you see is even more intense. Again, it's the same reason. It's just that the internet spreading far and wide, but also specifically about the influencer marketing perspective. If you study the culture of India in the last 100 or 200 years, you see it in our sports as well, right? The most popular sport in the country is cricket, which is in its own nature a sort of individualistic sport. It's one batsman versus one bowler. Right. And one of the country's legendary cricketers, Virender Sehwag, actually once said that India isn't a sports-loving nation, it's an icon-loving nation. It's just something inbuilt in our culture. So when the masses have these certain icons or people they look up to up there on the pedestal called the internet, they gravitate towards these people. And that's what I think creates large like influencer growth. And you see that in people like Baba Ramdev or Sadhguru or, even someone more modern like Luke Coutinho. You see these people having really loyal fan followings for the same reason. It's a part of our culture.
Very interesting. And you mentioned a very important and interesting fact about India there. India leapfrogged the computer economy and went right to mobile. Yeah. And you spoke about how you had a growth spurt in the regional follower base that you had. So can you talk a little bit about what was the difference that you encountered when you're looking to reach out to this segment vis-a-vis a segment of India which is largely English speaking, and the numbers according to you seem to be more encouraging in the more regional language market. So if you can talk a little bit more about That, in your experience, how's it been?
Yeah, the beautiful aspect of being a content creator is that you get a lot of access to numbers and data. So you can kind of live track how people's minds are evolving over the years as long as you stick to the game long enough. We
Right.
have probably a 2x or 3x growth rate in terms of speed on our regional stuff, and that's largely because of population. Also, like the English speaking audience in India is very small, and I think over the course of 5 to 6 years, you kind of reached out to the kind of people who'd probably latch on to your brand. But with regional, you're always finding new people. There's again 2x or 3x the numbers there. Also,
Wow.
with the English speaking audience, they're a lot more westernized. They think like anyone in USA or Europe thinks. They see the same movies, they listen to the same music. Most of them watch the same sports. So it's a very different kind of globalized audience. With the Indian audience, they're much more deeply rooted in Indian culture, very kind of religious in some cases, very emotional, very family oriented. They are ambitious as well, but the ambition is just beginning right now. Also, it used to take, so say in 2015, the English audience was very into the concept of fitness. Now, this fitness
Right.
wave hit the regional audiences only in 2019. So there was a gap of 4 years, which has kind of gotten shortened over time. So now in
Right.
2021, the kind of things that the regional audience is interested in is very similar to what the English audience is interested in. So they're gradually becoming the same kind of audience, but the differentiator is language.
Very
So that's
interesting.
what
So
I've
the
seen.
lag is gradually reducing that we used
Yeah.
to witness previously. Very interesting. Let's talk about your journey in the influencer space, and I must say it has been quite an extraordinary one. You started off on YouTube as a young college graduate with the agenda of spreading awareness around fitness with the Beer Biceps channel, and then you pivoted to incorporate men's lifestyle, grooming, and health into it. Today, you have more than 5 million subscribers across your two YouTube channels, and run one of the most successful Indian podcasts with guests like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Priyanka Chopra, and many others. You've had first-hand experience in the progress of the space in India. So, Ranveer, in your journey, what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced? Was there any form of backlash, and how did you overcome these challenges?
Um, there wasn't really a backlash. I think the challenge, not just for Indian creators, but creators all over the world, is reinvention. And considering the size of our population and also the interests, right? Like I remember when I started out early on, I was into fitness. Therefore, I followed American fitness influencers, and they were super niche. Like they went for fitness, and even in fitness, they'd go for a specific domain like powerlifting or yoga or whatever. I assumed that that would be the case for India as well. And very quickly, I learned that India is a country that loves something called masala, which means a mix and match of different elements. That's why in terms of Bollywood, in the Indian industry, we have a term called masala film, which means that there's a bit of emotion, a bit of action, a bit of drama. That's what Indian audiences really love. They love a bit of everything. They don't love niches. That's one thing I figured for sure. And that's why the challenge is just reinvention. And the challenge is how much is too much. You can't make it so masaledar, like so varied that you lose your originality also. But at the same time, you got to do something original. So over the years, I've just learned that what am I good at? Like I kept asking myself that question. Eventually, I figured that naturally I'm a curious person. I like learning about different subjects, and I love the process of video creation. So you take these two things, and you just keep repeating the formula and creating content using those same ideals.
Understand. So for you, what really worked is, let's say, in some forms, having a niche genre around which you focus, which was your anchor, and then also interspersing it with a few additional genres, which is what you call masala, bringing all of this
Yeah.
together to keep it interesting and, like I said, riveting for the audience to stay glued in.
Yeah,
Very
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. Which is also there's an American influencer called Joe Rogan. He's got a
Yes.
huge fan following in India for the same reason because his content is very masaledar. He'll talk about politics, geopolitics, fitness, animals, the army, movies. That's what Indians like, and he's one of the few international influencers who's doing that well.
Right, right. Well, that makes sense. And talking about the youth population in India, I mean, India has a youth population of around 450 million, which are between the age of 15 and 24. And with more than 700 million mobile devices across the country, majorly in the hands of youth, and high penetration of internet in India in tier 2 and tier 3 cities, the youth of today can aspire, influence, and change. And we see how that's true. And you're a very good example of it. So, Being a young influencer yourself, how do you think the youth population and this stronghold over social media across tier 1, 2, and 3 cities can be leveraged to expand this segment?
Yeah, so that's a beautiful angle that we have witnessed during COVID, actually, when it comes to doing social work through social media. We saw that during the second wave of the pandemic that the country had, it was actually the content creators and the online influencers who came forward and kind of arranged oxygen cylinders for people who needed it. They were the people who did a lot of the on ground, the so-called on ground work. So this is one example of it. And there's a ton of other examples where, say, social media influencers will help get stray animals adopted, or will help find someone who's missing. Will kind of help make society a better place through the power of their phones. But what I personally believe is that in the next 5 years, the large impact of the modern day social media influencer will be in the realms of education and changing the Indian education system. So the Indian education system is relatively backward as compared to the rest of the world. Anyone who's gone through it, I'm guessing Piyush, you've gone through it as well.
Yes,
So like
yes, I have.
you kind of know what I'm talking about in terms of we're still stuck in a time that's probably of the 1950s or the 1960s when it comes to education. Now, modern day education is happening online. People are studying for these competitive Indian exams through the internet, through other social media influencers. That's the big shift we're seeing. And when someone's teaching you a particular subject, it's not just the subject that they teach you, but it's also a thought process that they teach you. And therefore, you'll see this huge shift in the education system, in the education of the average Indian. And when I say average Indian, I don't mean people in cities, I mean people in small towns and rural India. Now, if there's a rise in education, there's also a sort of newfound hunger when it comes to knowledge, because now they realize that, okay, there's sports beyond cricket, there's music beyond Bollywood, there's politics beyond the politics we witness, there is a concept of geopolitics. This is what's actually happening in America, this is what's actually happening in Russia. So people get a wider worldview, which then impacts everything. Because India is a very conversational society also. Education, knowledge, facts, all these things spread really fast. It's also why social media influencers see so much growth here. So if, say, a social media influencer from America like Logan Paul or Joe Rogan kind of attaches themselves to the hearts of a few Indians, they'll eventually see a massive domino effect here. Indians talk a lot. So yeah, I don't know if I answered your question, but
No,
that's
no,
the
you did.
perspective.
I think that's a very interesting perspective, that education clubbed with technology is what's making an always curious Indian finally, allowing that Indian to go out and access the resources which has never been available to that person, and therefore that
Yeah.
will bring about a huge shift in both the consumer behavior as well as how the social influencer market changes over time.
Yeah, I also believe that a lot of countries are going to be outsourcing a significant chunk of work to India eventually, like what we saw with the software boom, the IT boom of the 90s. It's now
Right.
gradually becoming an agency boom, or a creatives boom, which we're seeing in the 2020s gradually, where Indian agencies are taking up a lot of graphic design work, etc., etc. This is going to spread a lot more, and I mean the goal is eventually uh, other countries outsource even large chunks of their work to India. Like I feel like the one good thing about Indians is we're fast learners. So as long as we have access to information, you'll see a lot of highly skilled professionals come out of this country.
Right. Right. So Ranveer, I'm jumping into a subject which is primarily your industry. In India, brands have a deep interest in bond of trust and authenticity that influencers share with their audiences. And many big brands have also started working with influencers, let's say on equity deals, incentivizing these creators to develop much more profound, meaningful tie. And in this process, the brands have also realized that the influencers are more than just a sales channel. They have the potential to be trustworthy communicators and effective venues for listening to the shifting customer preferences. So we see more and more brands now swaying away from, let's say, a quintessential Bollywood big name and approaching personalities like yourself, Komal Pandey, Ashna Shroff. So what do you think has been the most important factor in this transition towards social media influencers in India?
You're talking in terms of how brands are taking social media influencers more seriously, basically, right?
Yes, yes, yes. And
Um,
they're thinking of them not as just as a sales channel, but as
Yeah,
somebody who
got it.
can actually change the user behavior.
Yeah, got it. So again, I feel like this isn't the general scenario. There are exceptions in our world as well. There's good and bad in our world as well. You can't bracket like all social media influencers as good bang for your buck, basically. But the ones
Right.
that have been there for a while, who have a track record, who kind of understand the world of marketing as well, they are able to mold brand campaigns and brand positioning very well in front of the public eye. So if a
Right.
brand goes up to a seasoned social media influencer in India who's been there for a while, who understands their game, who understands their audience, who also understands the brand's perspective of things, that influencer has the capabilities to give the brand exactly what the brand wishes. So if the brand says, okay, I want you to generate sales, I want you to sell these many pieces of my product, I want you to create better branding, I want you to create a buzz, I want you to do XYZ, whatever. A good experienced social media influencer has the capability of basically being a world-class marketer. That's how I look at it. But the game for the brands is to find those experienced people who have access to the numbers and who are empathetic marketers who understand the brand as well as the audience.
It's a very interesting point that you're saying you can't just paint the whole industry with the same brush. There are some good examples of influencers out there who've made a difference, who always feature in the list of marketeers now, but that cannot be said about the entire industry. The industry is still some distance from where it can be considered a mainstream marketing channel rather than something that's more of a niche right now.
Yeah, but what I will say is that Gen Z of Indian creators, like kids born after 1998, you can kind of put them in the same box. They are super aware and they're naturally good marketers. It's probably an outcome of having grown up with social media all around them. I don't know why it's like that, but they're significantly, basically smarter and better than us.
Right.
It's like how athletes keep getting better. It's sort of the case with content creators as well. Maybe because there's access to more information, more reference points. So the newer generation, all of them are good. But the ones that
Right.
are established right now, you've got to kind of curate.
Right. Right. So Ranveer, almost 70% of Indians follow at least one influencer on social media platform. And in the last 2 years, company spending on influencer marketing has increased by around 36 odd percent. And this growth has been exemplary and perhaps amplified due to COVID. And people are spending more and more time on social media platforms. So do you think that this growth is something which can be sustained in the long run? I know you've briefly touched upon this subject, but there have been some concerns about the continued momentum in the space, and some critics even call it the influencer marketing bubble. So what is your take on that subject?
I think we're gonna witness consolidation happen in this space. Like the seasoned, bang for your buck influencers that we spoke about, they're still always going to have work, and they're always going to add value to both their audiences' lives and the brand's world as well. But you will see a slight drop off. That's what I anticipate. And by slight drop off, I mean not more than 10 to 20%. And I only say that because sports is coming back in a big way. Cinema halls are opening again. So there'll be that slight drop off. You'll see a lot of people who kind of found fame in the pandemic struggle to sustain themselves, because the real game of content creation happens over a 5-6 year time period. And there's a lot of people who can survive very easily for 1 or 2 years. But surviving beyond that is the real challenge in this world. The ones that end up surviving will always, be kind of growing. They'll make money. They'll add value to the brand's lives. So that's my take on it. But again, this is just guesswork. No one could
Right.
predict COVID. No one could predict what happened. This is what I anticipate because it's something to think about.
Right. And so what you're saying is that the pandemic has certainly accelerated the growth of this industry. And while there is some consolidation that's definitely around the corner, the consolidation would not lead to an explosion of the industry itself, but a few players dropping off, a consolidation which would maybe shave off 20% off the market. But in the long run, this is a market that's here to stay and
Yeah.
become a mainstream channel.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
But at the same time, it's unpredictable, because we should all know that we live in a reality where algorithms control our behaviors and algorithms control who's on top versus who's not. So honestly, the honest answer is that it's in the hands of the product guys who are in charge of big tech. If they make
Right.
interesting products and if they make interesting angles within their products, for all you know, this industry might just keep growing. So that's a good case scenario. My answer's from the perspective of what's out there already. Considering how the Twitters and the Instagrams and the Snapchats are built out right now, this is what I anticipate will happen.
Understand. My last question for you, Ranveer, is if you can share some advice with aspiring social media stars out there. You've had a great run. You've done some amazing work in this space. What would be your, advice to people who want to follow the same path that you've chatted?
Only take it up if you're really passionate about video creation. That's people underestimate that particular skill in this career. It's the basis of this career. Like in terms of in basketball, how you have dribbling, right, which is the basis of basketball. The basis of content creation is understanding filmmaking and video. It's honestly the core of it, and not every content creator enjoys honing their video skills. So as long as you're someone who naturally enjoys that, keep taking it forward. If you don't, there are other ways of growing your career while still doing something that you enjoy. So that's what I'll say.
Great, great. Well, Ranveer, thank you so much for joining us today. It was great having you at Think India's inaugural event, and we really appreciate you spending your time with us. Thank you so much.
I had a blast. Thanks, guys.